Hey everybody, this is installment number 3 in my video series about shipping for Etsy Print on Demand. And in this video, we're going to talk about handling shipping issues. So everything from package delays and lost packages to failed deliveries. So stick around and let's talk about handling all of those super fun shipping issues. All right, so unfortunately, as you all probably already know, one part of running an online business that involves sending physical products to a customer is dealing with shipping issues. And some of these are really minor issues that are easy, like it's a question, simple to answer, and others can go full-blown, complete mess where, you're stuck in the middle between a really unhappy customer and a shipping carrier that's just not helping you at all, and the customer is all out of sorts. And so there's a whole variety of situations that come up. And as an online seller of physical products, you need to know how to handle those scenarios. So we're going to talk through 3 different scenarios, one being really easy to respond to, and 2 being a little bit more difficult. And I'm going to show you exactly what I do and kind of explain why I do things the way I do. So the first one we're going to talk about is the easiest one. And it is just that you get a message from a customer asking why their order has not shipped yet, or they might actually be asking you just why they haven't received their order yet. They just wait, 3 days after their order is placed, and then they message you and say, "Where's my order?" And those are pretty easy to deal with. So the way I handle those is, obviously, I'm always polite, so you should always still keep your customer service basics in mind and always present yourself and the message you're sending as you want to help, you're there to answer their questions, you're not there to be rude or brush them off or just give a one-sentence answer because that will just make them more upset. So what I like to do is send a message back to that customer that just says something like, "Thanks for reaching out. Currently, we are averaging X days of processing time because each item in my shop is made to order. And from there, it can take, X days on average for shipping." I will usually kind of give them the quote of, let's say it was a t-shirt, I'll say, currently we're averaging about 3 business days to ship our t-shirts out. And then from there, can take anywhere from 3 to 5 business days for you to receive it. If they mentioned the number of days in the message, I also will point out to them that business days do not count weekends. Now, if the order did already ship and there's tracking and it's just clear they're not using the tracking, I usually also drop the direct link to their tracking in that message I send back to let them know, hey, it did already ship. It's on the way. At this point, it's up to the carrier to get it to you on time. Now let's dive into 2 other scenarios that come up. I'm not going to say frequently, but they come up fairly regularly. I get maybe one of these per month in the 4th quarter when it's really busy and the shipping carriers get really overwhelmed with package volume. These then tend to happen a little bit more, unfortunately for us. So the first one is going to be a lost package, or one that just kind of stops in its tracks. So in those scenarios, the customer is going to message you, and it could be, only a couple days after the tracking has stopped updating, or they could be patient and wait a week or 2 weeks before they message you. So the key to this is, of course, checking the tracking yourself. So take a look at the tracking, see when the last update was. For the example we're going to do, let's just assume that it has been 2 weeks since the last time the tracking has updated. So it was, at any point, doesn't matter if it was right at the beginning or halfway through, somewhere along the way, it just stopped. And there has been no update in the tracking for 2 weeks. The first step in handling this, of course, is to respond to the customer. So the number one thing I always tell the customer in any shipping issue, even if it's clear there is an issue, the first thing I always do is I politely remind the customer that I don't have control over the package once the carrier has possession of it. And of course, as I always say, you need to be polite about it, but it's perfectly fair to remind them of that, because some customers seem to think we have some magic portal that lets us see what's going on with a package when in fact we have, really no more information than they do. So respond to the customer and I let them know. So I'll remind them of that, but then I'll let them know I will look into it. I'll see what I can find out and I'll get back to them soon with an update. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to go to your platform, and in this case, we'll pretend it's Printify, and I will use the Submit Issue form, and I'll select Tracking Status, and I'll use this form that pops open in another tab to submit a question to the Printify support team. So it should pre-populate with the order ID and the SKU number, and then you just need to add a message in there. So I usually say something like, the tracking for this order has not updated for 2 weeks. Is the package considered lost at this point? The customer is asking for an update. So the reason I do this is because the answer that I have gotten from both Printify and Printful has varied from case to case. I don't know if their internal policies on these things change over time or if they handle them differently in the fourth quarter versus the rest of the year, but on a couple occasions, I have had Printify respond that they would consider the package lost at this point when tracking has not updated for 2 weeks, and they would issue a reprint. However, I've also gotten a response from Printify and from Printful that we needed to wait longer, up to 30 days from the original ship date, before we would consider the package lost and then issue a reprint or a refund. I've also had a third answer provided, and this one actually has become a little bit more common, especially in the next scenario, where the response will be they ask us or the customer to reach out to the actual carrier, like the local post office, and ask them to try and find the package or verify that they don't have it before they will issue a refund or a replacement. So because I don't know which one of those answers I'm going to get, I always just submit the question first and see what the response is. So you have 3 possible answers in my experience. Maybe there's a 4th or 5th answer that I don't know about, but 3 possible answers that you can get that I know of. So obviously those have 3 different next steps. If the answer is we need to wait till 30 days from the ship date, if you are still a full 2 weeks away from that mark, you're going to have to make some decisions about how you want to handle that with the customer, because that customer may not think it's reasonable to wait another 2 weeks before you actually do anything else to help them, meaning get a reprint or get a refund. So you really have to take it case by case when you're at that point. If you're close enough to the 30-day mark, like let's say you're only 3 or 4 days away from hitting the 30-day mark from that original ship date, I might just tell the customer, hey, I'm working with my supplier. We're digging into the tracking information and we're going to contact the shipping carrier. We just need a couple days to get that sorted out, and I'll be in touch with you soon. And usually that buys you a few days to where you can wait it out and then get back to Printify or Printful and say, hey, it's been 30 days, the tracking still isn't updated, and you can get your reprint or refund at that point. Now, of course, if they say that, yes, we'll consider it lost at this point, then you can go ahead and ask the customer whether they want a reprint or a replacement, and then get back to your platform to let them know which one the customer wants. And if the answer is the third version, which is contact the carrier and have them verify that they cannot find it, then you will have to go through another process. But we're going to go to the next example, and then we'll show you an example of that process, because this applies to both. And in my experience, that answer is more common in this scenario. So the next scenario is the customer messages you and says that the tracking indicates their package was delivered, but they have not received it. So it's not there, they can't find it, but the tracking says it was delivered. So this can be really frustrating for the customer and for us, because we know that nobody likes to pay for an item and not receive it. As a customer, of course, I wouldn't want that. And it's happened to me personally. Now, in my experience, usually one of 3 things happens. Either the package shows up the next day, which likely means it was scanned as delivered by accident, like the carrier, the literal person scanned it, didn't mean to select delivered, but they did, or something like that. And so it'll just show up the next day. That's happened to me. Another thing that's happened to me is it was delivered like to my neighbor, and my neighbor brought it over and put it in front of my door. So that's another thing that could happen. The third thing is it truly never shows up. And unfortunately, that's also happened to me once or twice. That's the toughest one, because obviously the customer is going to be really frustrated with that. So if the customer messages you on the actual day that it was scanned saying delivered on that day, then what I'd always do is I, again, politely respond to them and just let them know, hey, I've seen it before where the carrier scans it as delivered by accident, like it was an error, and then it just shows up the next day. So let's give it a day day or two, and please just message me back if you don't receive it, by that point, and then we'll take it from there. And I've never had an issue with that. The customer's always pretty understanding of that, and they are pretty good about giving it another day or two. And I have had a couple cases where they messaged me back saying, yes, it showed up the next day. So whether that was the neighbor bringing it over or the carrier, I don't know, but either way, they got the package. But I've also had cases where they message me back 2 or 3 days later and say, it still hasn't showed up. Now is the point where, again, I'm still going to message the platform first. So I'm going to send a message to Printify or Printful or whoever the platform is, and I'm going to say, it says delivered, but the customer has not received it. Are we able to provide a reprint? This is the one where I would send this message first just in case they agree to do a reprint right away. But most of the time, what you're going to get is a response saying, please reach out or have the customer reach out to their local post office or distribution center and ask them to verify that they cannot locate the package. So that's the step that you have 2 choices. You can either ask the customer to do this, or you can file a claim or a request for support with the carrier. I have done both. If it's USPS, if it's the US Postal Service, or if it's in another country, if it's like, the Daily Mail carrier, then I do usually ask the customer if they can do that. And the reason I do that is because usually they are more familiar with their actual local post office than I am, right? They know which one to call. They know which one actually delivers their mail. And I don't know any of that information. So I usually ask the customer if they would mind doing that rather than trying to take it on myself. Now, if it's some other carrier like UPS or FedEx or something like that, sometimes I don't ask the customer to do it themselves because the big distribution centers for those carriers, they don't carry their daily mail and all that stuff. So the customer's probably not as familiar with those locations. So what do you do if you're not going to ask the customer to reach out to the carrier and have them do that follow-up? Well, you can submit requests online, and here are a couple ways to do it. So with USPS, if you just go to USPS.com, and by the way, as a reminder, this process also works for the ones that are lost in transit, so the tracking just stopped updating. So I would do this as well if the print-on-demand platform responded and said, you need to contact the carrier and have them trace the package or verify they can't find it. So go over to the help banner here and go to Find Missing Mail, and then you can actually scroll down to number 2 here and click on Start Your Form, and then you're going to have to enter the tracking number. So grab the tracking number from the EasyPost tracking from your order and paste that in here. And of course, it's going to say that the tracking indicates it was delivered, but we're still going to click this Start button right below that. And that takes you to the actual form. So it brings forward the tracking information, and then you need to scroll down. You need to click on the I acknowledge, and then you now have the form to complete. So you can enter all of this information. There's really not much you need here. So you select the class of mail, and if you don't know, or if it was not one of those, you just put unknown. And you don't select any of these special options because there were none, so you just put none. Where was the item mailed from? You're going to pick a business. Where was the item supposed to be delivered? And it's going to be a residence. For the type of mail piece, you're going to put package. And then do you know the contents? You're going to say yes if it's one of these options here. So there's clothing. So you can select clothing if it was apparel. If your item fits any of these other things, you can select it. If it doesn't fit, you can just select unknown. Dollar value, just put in a quick rough estimate there. And then you select scanned delivered but not received. Different options display here if the tracking does not indicate that it was delivered. So in that case, you might just have to select something different. And at the very bottom is where you actually put in the information that you want them to know. So this is where I would say, my customer has said they did not receive this package. They looked all over for it and they cannot locate it, but the tracking indicates it was delivered. Can you please attempt to locate this package? And you'll be able to get an email response. And USPS, in my experience, could take 24 to 48 hours to respond to this. This way, you're not putting this burden on the customer. It's a pretty quick and easy form. And like I said, I might do this maybe on average once a month. I may have to do it a couple more times during the fourth quarter when it gets really busy, but it's pretty easy to do and it takes that burden off the customer. If your carrier's UPS, I'm just going to give you this example so you kind of have an idea of what you need to try and do. FedEx, I think, has something very similar. So on UPS's website, you need to go to support and then you need to go to tracking support. And on this page, it's going to ask you to log in, which you should probably have a UPS account if you don't, because there's some features and things you can do, forms you can use and things like that are relevant to have for either your personal use use or your business. But what you need to do is actually scroll down here and find this Contact UPS link, which takes you to this page. And then you need to scroll down some more and find the link that says email UPS way at the bottom. So they really try to keep you from contacting them directly by burying that link. So if you followed that path, that was multiple clicks to get here, but now you can enter your name, email, and then select drop downs to provide them the information they need and indicate basically the same thing, whether it's a lost package or one that says it was delivered but it was not, and you will get a response. Now, basically we are just doing this with the expectation that whoever this carrier is, they're going to respond and say, there's nothing we can do. And that's fine, because that's all you need to go back to your print-on-demand platform and say, the carrier verified they cannot locate the package, and now you'll get your refund or replacement. So does that seem like a lot of work? Well, it is a little bit of work. But like I said, for me, this doesn't happen super frequently to where it's an overwhelming amount of work. And I also like to take the burden off the customer whenever possible, because it just helps me maintain the positive feedback, the positive reviews for my shop. I'm not getting 1-star reviews because somebody was mad that I wouldn't help them. So one way or the other, you should be able to get a refund or a reprint done for the customer. It just depends on what your print-on-demand platform is asking you to do first. In some cases, you'll get it immediately. In some cases, you'll have to go through a couple steps to get it for them. In my opinion, your goal should always be to get it resolved for the customer, even if you need to ask the customer to either to wait a little bit or to help out by reaching out to the post office. And if you let the customer see through your communication that that is your goal, that you want them to receive the thing they paid for, it would be very rare that they will still leave you a bad review. So that's it. That's how I handle those types of shipping challenges or questions from customers. I'm curious to know in the comments if you've gotten different answers from the ones I shared from print-on-demand platforms as far as lost packages or missing packages. And if you have ways that you've handled these scenarios that worked out really well for you, then also let me know that in the comments, because I love to learn from all of you as well. But if you found this information helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button so that YouTube can show this video to more people, and subscribe to the POD Insights channel to find out when I post new videos. Thank you to all of my returning subscribers and all viewers. I really appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.